Do we need the microphone for recording purposes here? We're not that loud. You got it back there? Good evening, everyone. I appreciate you coming out to this joint meeting. It's a great time for council. Me to get on the planning commission to get an opportunity to talk about some direction, about potential projects that are coming up in the future. And appreciate everybody making time for it. Stuart, I want to let you open up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one thing, we haven't had one of these meetings since 2013, as we noted in the cover memo, and I felt like it would be advantageous to us to have this meeting again on an annual basis to set an action agenda to sort of give the Planning Commission some direction from council for items to work on. Historically, we would hold these meetings in the springtime and for the fiscal year, July 1 to June. But again, since we haven't had one in 5 years, I did want to go ahead and get a meeting scheduled. So I think at this point, we'll look to do this as like a calendar year action agenda for 2019, which works out well since terms tend to expire at the end of the calendar year anyway. So that is what we're going to do here. Historically, I guess those of you that were either on the Planning Commission in the past, like Mr. Waltz, who's now a council member, or some of the longer-serving planning commissioners might remember how these meetings ran, but we did come up with some action agenda items. Historically, we would start the meeting with a retrospective look back at the prior set of action items. I dispensed with that this time since it's been 5 years, so a lot of them in looking back are sort of events or issues that cut across lines, but also are items that are not really applicable now. So I've dispensed with that. So we're sort of starting fresh, so to speak, and at next year's meeting, we'll have sort of a retrospective look. But what we did do is something that historically we've done with these action agenda items is staff would generate some items for discussion for potential inclusion, as these items have come up in the past 12 to 18 months, so we felt like that would be a good discussion starting points. But what we'll do is, as these items come forward, we will record them on the easel pad and then come up with a list of action items, 10 to a dozen action items for council to pass at the next meeting, which will then be transmitted to the Planning Commission for consideration and action over the next 12 to 14 months. So by way of introduction, that's what I have, Mr. Mayor. And we do have in the packet a proposed action agenda list for discussion. Again, these could be certainly considered for inclusion or not, but what I would like to do is turn it back over to the mayor, and we sort of begin just having some bit of discussion about developing an action agenda list for calendar year 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Biedenbach. And I'm actually going to pass the mic around so everyone, although we have name tags facing us so we know where to sit. Yeah. We can turn them around. We don't have to. Yeah. Much better. Much better. Let's hit the proposed 2019 action agenda, and I appreciate the staff putting this together. I'm just going to put this up. Brian? No, fine. We're just getting started. Number one on our agenda is land use for the area generally east of Whiskey Road, west of Powder House Road, and south of Pine Log Road. I'm sure the staff want to go into a little bit about the issues here.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And again, I want to note too, these items are in no particular order in terms of importance. We sort of, Ryan and I, put together just a little list. We didn't want to overwhelm with a number of issues, but these are items that have come up in the past. But of course, this is the undeveloped property on the eastern side of Whiskey Road, as stated, typically part of the so-called Powerhouse and Centennial Connector. Right now, of course, almost all of that property is in this county, but we do believe in the coming years, as it's developed, they will want to come into the city, require city services, et cetera. So we need to at least be cognizant of that and begin planning as we move down the road for those eventual development of that property.
What would the planning commission study in that regard?
So it'd probably be more along the lines of, so you have essentially your transportation plan, kind of the skeleton of that put together. So it'd be more looking at land use and kind of appropriate land use. It'd be kind of, I think, probably adding that area to our long-range map and our comprehensive plan, that sort of thing, to make sure that you have a balance of uses that don't ultimately undo the work that those connectors are doing long-term as far as traffic and impacts. And so try to find that balance, maybe kind of find a way to direct future development in that area, kind of add some predictability to it.
So this has to do with the Watson track?
That is one of the tracks, that is correct. It's about 400 to 500 acres in that general vicinity, but the Watson tract is a significant component. That is a little over 100 acres of this whole.
Well, is the city going to move on that?
Well, that is something under consideration. We have been in discussions with Mr. Watson and other property owners, so I would say it is, there is a little bit of movement. Of course, a lot of this is contingent on two primary things. Number one is the capital project sales tax round 4. If that referendum fails, that is going to be a very difficult, I just don't see a way that we could, in the short term, meaning over the next 5 years, have some sustainable action on it. And certainly also we are working on a infrastructure bank application, but as we've noted, the infrastructure bank right now has got some legal issues they're working through greater than what our application involves. So while we're working on getting an application together, they are not currently accepting applications until their litigation is resolved. So that's kind of the status on that.
We've got a conceptual idea of the road control.
That is correct.
That's what we need to give the plan, to get them to look at it. And that way you talk, okay, this is where we're thinking about putting roads. Now you talk about the land use around it. If you don't know where the road's going, you can't decide the land use.
And we have a solid idea of that, so we could go ahead and provide that to the Planning Commission here in the coming weeks, especially, we could go ahead and get it to planning, and maybe once the CPST referendum is passed this on November 6th, we could, should it pass, I think, go ahead and start scheduling some of that for Planning Commission discussion, because I know we'll sort of ramp up some of our discussions with the property owners once this, once the fate of the referendum.
Do they want to come in the city?
They would have to come in, don't they? If they are developed and improved, yes, because they would want city services, and we would not, I don't certainly want to speak for council, but I believe the council historically has said that if it's contiguous to the city and they want city services, they would need to come into the city. And they are aware of that. We have had those
So
conversations.
they want to come in, as far as you know.
If it's improved, yes, they do.
Which is great for us, because we pick up sewer water taxes. Sure.
If they want to do it, I think it's worth looking at. With the road, that's key. I mean, I know vague, and, I know where the area you're talking about, and I know y'all have plans for the road, but I have absolutely no idea where they would go or where they would be, and I think that's a good point.
And right now, And Mr. Chairman, I know right now what we've looked at is if we were to pursue this, probably you'd have it phased. A phase one right now, which we've got a ballpark price of $12 million roughly, including land acquisition, stormwater, construction, is extending Centennial Drive to the south, and then starting the first leg of the so-called Powderhouse Connector, running from east forward behind the Cracker Barrel, and then where the two intersect would be the first phase. And then the second phase would be just the Powderhouse Connector extending out to where it would intersect with East Pine Hall Road.
So there'd have to be a zoning application, there'd have to be a zoning decision made regarding that.
Correct. Correct. And we've already looked at everything from potential calculation of impact fees based on conceptual plans that we've seen from some of the large property owners. They've done some modeling, and we've sort of gotten a sense of potential per parcel impact fees that would be needed to address the additional impact on our infrastructure.
And it's generally good policy that if there is an area outside of our corporate limits currently that could potentially be annexed into the city during the lifespan of the comprehensive plan, to have a land use designation. Again, it doesn't have to be specifically single-family residential, multi-family residential. You don't have to get into like the complete density of it, but at least to have some guidance as to what you think would be appropriate future use of some of those areas. So in that way, it would be relevant as well, because I think that's something we could see during the lifespan of our current continued plan.
So would purchase of the property come before the zoning? It would have to. Are we purchasing the right of way? We're just purchasing the right of way, right?
That is correct.
Right.
Any acquisition of city property, or excuse me, of property would just be for road right of way. And the road right now is designed to have 120-foot right of way.
That's good.
But that includes a utility corridor, motor vehicle transportation, sidewalk, and bicycle, and landscape median. This is,
We don't have to purchase a lot of right of way.
that is correct.
I think they are.
Well, they are, but we don't have to purchase.
Yeah, it's almost got to be a proposed matter. We've got to have an idea of what they want to do and how that's going to affect the road that we need to build, and how they're going to contribute, whatever they're going to contribute to get that done. So it's not a situation, I don't think, where we walk by the land and just wait for them to tell us what they want to do with it. It's not a case where we go first and we need to go together.
I'd like to know the sequence. Sounds like there's a set sequence that's going to have to be followed.
That
And
is
at some point in time, planning commission gets involved.
That is correct. And again, right now, obviously, it's a significant amount of money in which the city doesn't have the ability to write a check, but we are, again, once the CPST passes, I think that'll give us kind of some sort of calendar going forward of how we can pursue that along with the infrastructure bank.
Well, I sure hope the city moves on this while we've got a chance to make this happen.
We're not good property owners, they're willing to give us a hand. We just have to.
The big tracks of purchasing close to Whiskey Road. The big expense, I guess, that was in the problem is we can take all of the Whiskey Road water and correct that and bring it with us all the way down. And I'm looking at it down Powderhouse Road, but there's a very nice pond down there right now that came out rain. And I know you and I talked about the fact it's tight. I don't know where that was working on that.
Is that part of the county project?
Yes.
They're working
Yes.
I did, at the bottom of that hill. Yeah, that's been there for years.
It's a sewer
And they did,
leak.
right, they did some work to try to rectify it at one point, and
That
it
is
was a
correct.
little,
Joint
but it wasn't
project.
a big rain, like 6 inches the other night, there's
But
no
without city money, we're dead in the water.
time.
I wouldn't say we're dead in the water, but it's extremely difficult.
And we've only got 8 million in
Correct.
CPC for transportation.
That is correct.
I thought we were going to use that maybe as our 20%, for SID projects.
That is correct, but with SID, without SID money, we could do some of this work. For example, the powder house work would eliminate traffic by up to 23%. Doing a phase one would reduce traffic. In the phase one is the Centennial extension and the little first phase of the powder house. We're trying to get it up on the screen. But I've got it here on my iPad if you want to pass it around. But it would, I think it would be feasible with existing funding if CPST passes to where we could finance at least a first phase internally, because we would have 2/3 of the money in hand.
Have we given the plan committee the essence of the ritual briefing on our total projection of thoughts on the road development, stormwater development?
They have not had a formal personal briefing from Rick Tool, but I know they've had, access to the documents has been.
Right, so it's, yeah, I think it came with the comprehensive plan process, but it's kind of been refined since then, and probably a good idea. At your next meeting, we're bringing the level of service study to you. We would probably follow up by bringing that to planning commission at a work session, which includes some of that stuff. So probably bring everybody back up to speed.
How are conversations going with the county as far as, because to accomplish this, there has to be some joint collaboration with the county to accomplish that retention pond, pull that water in from Whiskey Road and not inundate the new project. So there has to be that.
We have had coordination and have been meeting with the county at a very high level. Myself and Mr. Killian, as well as their relevant department heads, engineering, planning, as well as our staff and finance. We've all had some meetings, both it's a big group and in smaller groups to work on this, so there is coordination on this with the county. Has been.
You ever did that water?
Yes.
You're talking, I think you're talking major problem. I hope I'm wrong, but you might even want to think about just designating a part of that area, the big old retaining area.
Well, that is what Mr. Watson, they have all already talked about.
Okay.
They've said they would give us a call.
Coming over there where you come off the Centennial.
But that's
Correct.
to alleviate all the problems. It's still an area with wetlands, and we've got to get remediation of wetlands.
But this is the first project to come up with 400 houses in the city of Aiken. Yeah, we need to look at it twice.
I agree.
Something we need,
I agree with you.
a lot of different,
I agree with
that's first project.
Well, we got 140 nice houses going up here, condos, hopefully.
Do we want all houses, or would we want a mix of some type of commercial?
Probably be a mixed use, I would assume. One thing, even with the road design, though, they're talking a limited access, so it doesn't stop, go, and with frontage. And
Even that, though, I think you'd probably be going to need some kind of long-term policy in there for, for that road type, which we really don't have in town right now. I guess you could call it expressway or parkway. That, you can set some sort of specific access management policy on that to make sure, you're not going to end up shooting yourself in the foot long-term with traffic that uses it.
well, it's a good project and certainly something that deserves to be on the list for 2019 because, as Councilman Waltz said, we haven't had an opportunity for this kind of growth, and we haven't had the opportunity to solve a transportation issue like on Whiskey Road like this in a long time. So
Any water problem in this, it's all.
That's a hard thing for the entire city.
So if Infrastructure Bank was operating as normal, we would submit in December, which we will have a proposal ready for. And then I think they were awarded, Stuart, correct me, is it January they let us know when they're ready?
No, it's more like mid-year of the fall, or it's about 6 months after a deadline, typically.
So we're waiting to see what that deadline is. We have some other funding too, the Tiger grants, which they call them something else now, I think, but Tiger grants from federal. We have enough money put in that we have some match.
It's infra now, the Tiger Grant's infra, but yes.
Talked to Lindsey Graham about that already.
Well, I would urge the city council to be bold in this. I think it's an absolutely bold, man. Move on. Move forward hard as you can, fast as you can, what you got to do, move on, because it's a great opportunity. It's really is. Great opportunity.
We need this project.
We do. I agree. Be bold.
It addresses so many components that have been constant issues throughout the city. And to be able to have a project that addresses all these components that really have been a heartache for the entire city as a whole is huge. We don't always have that opportunity.
Stuart and Ryan, could we set up and make sure that the planning commission has a full presentation on this?
Absolutely.
So they can see the full scope of it?
It'd be good. That'd be good. We don't know, we just know little bits and pieces. I've learned more today than I knew about it.
We could have Rick and his staff come and brief the planning commission at a meeting, one of the upcoming meetings.
We can continue to do joint updates as things happen so that everyone's on the same page. All right, any other discussion on item 1? All right, moving down, number 2, this is regulations regarding alternative lending businesses.
This is something that came up really heavily as part of the Richland West conversation that we had about a year ago. Is the density of the alternative lending businesses along, particularly Richland West, but whether, that could kind of occur in other areas of town as well. The issues are kind of wide-ranging, and that one that they're maybe seen as predatory lending practices, that other, go down to the color scheme and design of the buildings and things like that. I've heard kind of numerous different types of complaints regarding that. On the flip side, if you read articles, some would say that, some of the planning articles would say that, if you were to kind of try to limit the concentration of them, you're essentially limiting, or potentially limiting the market in such a way that it might be a more competitive situation for the lenders at this point, where they would have to have at least, the ability for people to shop around in the area. I don't know how valid that is, but it's a point that was made in some of the planning articles. But whether that's something that the council feels would be a worthwhile endeavor to try to look into addressing that issue, whether it be particularly along Richland West or as kind of a general citywide policy regarding how those concentrate in locations where they might be appropriate.
Frustration is, can you do that legally?
Other cities have.
Just wanted to clear you away from that.
I'd like to see Ryan give us the summary of these things we have seen.
Yeah, if it's by right, if it's DD, it's part, I don't know if it's by right, so I don't know how much you.
Give us an example.
One of the things Stuart and I talked about, if the concern is really, the color of the buildings, what do they look like? I don't think council and planning commission have the stomach for this. I mean, I think I've heard since I've been city attorney, we want that area of Richland Avenue to look at. And so if you treat it like an entryway, perhaps you come up with a overlay district that applies all the way down Richland Avenue all the way to your bypass. And you set up color schemes, and what buildings should look like, and things like that. So, yeah, you've got it now, but as we process it through to the future, they get better looking over time. So I don't think anybody would think Richland Avenue is best a street in the city.
But you can't put a limit on how many types of business, say certain type of business.
We have not done that historically.
But you can do it.
I'd want to scrutinize that.
You can do it from point before.
Correct.
Like everybody that's there can stay, but from now on, if you want to build going out Richland Avenue West, there can only be so many within a certain.
I can't tell you with certainty that I would agree with that right now.
But you got to do it there,
But
but
I have to look at it.
you can't single out lenders and say, we're going to make lenders adhere to some rule that we're not going to make a bank adhere to, right? You can't single anybody out like that.
So you.
Not where they have right by zoning.
Again, I would have to do, I know other cities have attempted to do those sorts of things. I've not researched a lot of the specific ways in which they had, whether it's buffering requirements or license quotas, and how they define them as something that is worth additional scrutiny than any other business. Again, I think it goes to what it's called, predatory lending practices, but kind of how you define those, and again, be very careful legally as well, that whether it's worth the time to put the research in to at least kind of discuss.
So you can. You have no control over the colors that you're coming up with, because that green and gold is hideous.
So that gets into number 3, not to jump ahead there. I think the two are kind of intertwined.
I started to bring them up together, Ryan. I think they are, and I'd like to expand on the possibility of the Richland Avenue Overlay District as well, because I think it's probably a better way to control aesthetics of those entryways than limiting a type of business. But
Right, so there's different ways you can, and I've heard it, Richland West, I guess, is a good example, but almost every community of the age of Aiken has essentially what I call this beltway around it that's like the land that, planning forgot. It's kind of when planning, like zoning really kind of took a certain turn, and it's more on safety, but like the landscape was very automobile oriented, and so you end up with like a lot of sparsely landscaped parking lots and older buildings and things like that. And while they're good in one way, that they're typically actually fairly affordable incubator space for startup businesses in a lot of ways, it also kind of lends itself to, and on the design side, people just trying to get attention, I guess, is what I would say, through their marketing. And in some ways that's appropriate, in some ways it's creative. In other ways, I've heard there being concern, not only just Richland West is a good example, but generally within our entryways as to whether it's some way to balance aesthetics, with being able to allow development some leeway. So an overlay district is one thing. I know the city had looked at that probably 8 or so years ago, and then there was a document that was put together, and whether there could be some things from that we looked at revisiting or not. Other communities, another community I interned for in college just had a strict. It was more cut and dry. You didn't have to go to a design review board or anything. It just said if you're within 200 feet of these roads in our city, you need to be at least 35% brick on your building, and you have this color palette to pick from for the rest of your colors aside from your corporate colors. There's, on that side it's very simple, straightforward administratively, and it also gives like a very clear expectation, while maybe if you create an overlay that would have to go through a design board, there might be some more back and forth for some creativity between individual developers and businesses and that board, but it also could be asked to maybe create some uncertainty. But those are a couple different ways that, just examples, you can kind of build things into your code, you can create an overlay district, you can create overlay standards, you can create them for, again, like a specific area like Richland West, or if you wanted to apply them to, I guess, anything that you would consider a high, a high impact street, I guess, where it carries a lot of traffic and a lot of people, have to use those on a daily basis, or where you want aesthetics to improve.
But you gotta, and I know where you're coming from, but you can't single out a specific type of institution to do that.
You could
an overlay, it's
right,
gotta be everybody.
Right, it would be everybody. Yeah, you can't singularly talk about a specific institution, but
Right before this meeting, I had a conversation with Brian. He informed me that this Dollar General went out there on Pine Wall.
we have an application for a,
So I'm sure there'll be another brick front, no side of the building. And I was...
We're on time off.
out near Citizen Park, west of Banks.
Oh, okay.
South.
I was outside of Allendale on the Sweetie Outpost, and next to it is the Dollar General. It's a really nice looking store. It's party plank side and then blends in with the character of everything around and everything else. You can make people do so, but we have to have an overlay district that all have to comply to. That's right. And that's what we need to help control it. Otherwise, we're going to have much brick front side of buildings. They seem to be putting one on every corner.
Maybe that should be, I can send to the planning commission to study overlay district.
When you say Richland Avenue West, how far out Richland Avenue West?
And so it's kind of for, the area that comes up as the primary area to claim is from Calumet Hill east to Waterloo Street, essentially.
You push past that and go to Sam's?
that would be
Yeah,
the city
you'd
limits.
probably, if you want to think, you'd probably go to the corporate limits, which is essentially, Sam's Club, the intersection there.
We'll put a Walmart on Richland Avenue built. Planning commission help them decide what colors and decide what they will all that.
And for
They
large,
had arches on the top, like this, everything else.
so for large regional projects, we currently do have those kind of standards that allow you that. So for instance, like Old Fresh Market was constructed, that went through an aesthetic review. So other kind of examples where that occurred. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, everything beige like the Hilton template, but it can be, there's different things. You pick what's important to you, and in most communities, you do it by hierarchy of growth. So you say, these are the major traffic thoroughfares in the city, and we want to have specific kind of oversight or over those, and so it's kind of all part of that process to figure out what's important location.
And I think we would have a consensus of this group that that's something that, as a city, we would like to move forward on sooner rather than later.
And we've added, I guess, a study of overlay districts as well.
We get, I know it kind of falls into with the design standards, but we've allocated some money for entryway signs.
Correct.
Could we do a quick update? I don't know if you or Tim would want to do that, but
Yeah, I know Tim has been the lead person on that. I know he can give an update.
There's always, just one more comment on the whole overlay concept. It's always a balancing act between how it looks, how much you control it, versus the investment the developer into it. You can't get too far. You know what I mean? You can't get too far.
Well, we
Because
don't
then
want
you can cut down on the people that want to come. And
We don't want to deter
you want to
investors.
deter investments and people coming, but you want to maintain, it's a balance, it's a tricky balancing act with that whole overlay thing. I think it's a good concept to look at.
You might attract some investors by doing that.
You might. Some
I mean,
people
there's a flip
prefer it.
side to that.
There is, I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, it's two sides.
Somebody don't want to invest in something that one of these things pop up next to them, and they know if there's restrictions, I'd be more inclined to invest.
That's right, that's right.
So,
The look is going to be
I think we can make a marriage out of both ends.
Yes.
Certainly worth looking at.
a lot of the input we got from the public hearings were from the business owners, for example, on Richland West, and they were asking for something.
Yeah, they want the property value.
Tim, do you want to give us just an update on some of our entryways as far as the signage and?
Sure. The biggest update, first and foremost, of the three initials DOT. They've been extensively involved in the process. Makes it a lot slower than we would prefer it to be. I'd say that right now our signage efforts are in two parts. We have our wayfinding project, which is largely concentrated on pointing out points of interest throughout our community and better delineating our downtown, putting those boundaries out and saying, welcome to downtown as you get into that kind of central area of the community. That's moving forward, and we do expect to have, those would be smaller, very attractive decorative signs that say, welcome to downtown. Now, for the entryways, we currently do have pretty large installations with DOT encroachment permits at our corporate limits. We're talking about the Sands Club down there now, kind of on the hill on the right. We also have a smaller sign on the west side coming in on Richland. Since those have existing encroachment permits, we're trying to get the other encroachments for the interstate figured out, but we'll probably look at a design that would incorporate a new look for all of those signs. The existing ones, I think, most of you, if you do it by, they're very dark. They're kind of a black background with a gold. It makes it kind of difficult to see, so we like to revision those. Presently, the holdup with I-20 has been that with our exit down here off of US 1, the elevations just are not right to have a very good or any display from the interstate when you ride by. In order to build a sign that meets DOT requirements, your base would be immense with a little sign on top of it. What we're looking at, and we actually, Stuart and I discussed this last week, and we're going to go look at it, the city owns property along Interstate 20 between the two exits there. And part of the reason that things are so restricted is because of the great beautiful tower that Rockville erected before the DOT got involved, and they made a lot of rules and regulations based on that. But we're actually considering a very nice project and kind of getting those three initials of DOT out of it and working on some property that is very visible from the interstate that actually belongs to the city. So that's kind of our next step.
Are you talking about, are you referring to, we don't know the forwarding?
No, as we were talking about, as we were talking about entryways, yeah, he's just talking some signage.
Anything you say anything you put up now, DOT got prior approval?
Anything in the right of way.
Anything, and that's big normally, so.
There's been some discussion on Richland Avenue from Walmart back all the way to Waterloo Street. We have wide area. Richland is very, very wide, monster suicide lane. Why don't we have beautification projects coming down the middle of Richland Avenue, County Hill, going back up County Hill, around that wall we talked about, and try to beautify that area a little bit more than walking into, like Gail said, the yellow and gold signs.
That is something certainly that we can discuss with the Department of Transportation that goes with their road.
One thing we are doing for the existing improved areas with their landscape is getting pricing to put sod in. It is going to be kind of pricey, but to make it look more appealing. I mean, the mulch looks good when you first lay it down, but after a few days, of course, it starts to look gray and weathered. But I've got staff reviewing that potential pricing.
And essentially, that would be in the existing medians between kind of Sam's and when you get up to
Direct highway.
Yeah, direct highway. And that once we have the cooperation with DOT to be in there, we can kind of replant and do what we want to do. But as far as altering the road surface itself, that's pretty
It'd be
expensive.
interesting to look into it, because that would make a more beautiful entrance to the west coming into town.
Yes.
And if you didn't want to do sod, which requires water, you could consider some sort of xeriscaping
Yes.
with small planted areas within, like gravel.
Yes.
Built up in gravel and then small planted areas, which would require less water and less maintenance.
We did a little micro version of that at the Eastgate traffic circle.
Yes, and it looks, I know that's, it looks great. It looks great. I looked at it 2 days ago and I thought, ooh, I'm glad they did that. You don't have to deal with the plants anymore. It really looks nice. Very nice. That Eastgate Circle is such a high visibility area. The crews were out there weekly or bi-weekly, and now they don't have to do.
Correct. Yeah, thanks to Councilwoman Gregory, we worked on that.
Who's here yet?
This is Leslie. What a pop-up report right now, and I know you're discussing it already. They have full interest rates to our city, but number one
Highway 19?
number one coming into agents from the Augusta area, coming east. And number one, I just received a call this morning with about 75 people coming for an event in Augusta, and many of them are first-timers, and possibly moved to this area. And so the aesthetic is critical at this point, and this will take place sometime the first or the second week in November, based on what I heard today. But when I look at the number one Richland Avenue, close to downtown area, we have an abundance of predatory vendors. I don't know how many more will get on that corner, but that seems to be the attraction where people are inclined, these vendors are inclined to want to locate on that corner. I know we said earlier that we cannot tell these folks where they can and cannot locate, but at some point, I guess we have to say that Twin is oversaturation, and it could become just demand for them. But in talking about development, when I look at the number one corridor, as someone mentioned, I think it was Mr. Wolf, Councilman Wilson mentioned Walmart. That development was done, I think, with some pride, and I think some of the developers tend to take more pride than others. In spite of what is required, they're going to be gone when it's required, which makes their piece of property more so if we can encourage that in whatever way we can, it will be to all of our benefit. Because people are coming to this area, I know that Kim, as well as our mayor and our city manager heard this very strongly this past week. They're moving here in the CSRA, and we want to make our town as attractive as we can to encourage them to locate not only the attraction, but the other values that we bring along with scenic charm. All those things will enhance our community to let folks want to say, hey, this is where I want to be.
Good point.
I mean, you ignore the dust, it's all nice and grass cut over there and manicured, and you come to Aiken, you see your bushes. Pretty simple.
Yeah, the sod does make a difference.
And some of the things that we're talking about in terms of making it more aesthetically calming, it's not expensive. It just requires a little TLC. Much like what I have to do with my hair sometimes.
Thank you, Leslie.
Rick does too.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on mine this morning.
Thank you for those comments.
We're going to move on down. Any other comments on number 2 or 3? Glad we hit those pretty full. Item number 4 is review of the amendments of the traffic management ordinance.
Yeah, one thing, we have been looking at this for close to a year, I believe. And one thing I do want to note for council, we are having our level of service report. It's been a number of years since we've had a briefing by the traffic engineer to council about it. But at our work session Monday, our traffic engineer is going to give a briefing on the level of service report that's done every 2 years. But I've been with the city for almost 8 years, and council's never had a formal briefing. But I know back in the 2000s, on occasion, the engineer would give a briefing. So there will be some of that. Some of this will be discussed further.
And so kind of the other thing of that is, so yeah, every 2 years we do the level of service study. One thing we've run into is that we at the city of Aiken define level of service very differently than DOT defines level of service, and most modern traffic engineers would define level of service. We define it based on capacity of the roadway, so it's just total cars per day per stretch of road, okay? But in reality, you typically run into your concern conditions at peak hours. Your real telltale times are AM and PM peak traffic, and that is how DOT reviews their traffic ordinances, is their traffic impact studies. And those typically also are based on not necessarily just bulk capacity of the roadway, but how long I'm waiting at different intersections and lights and those sorts of things. And so kind of stemming back to the business-friendly community that met when I first came to town 2 years ago, as to trying to align some of those things, just so, when I, as a city, am requiring somebody to do a traffic impact study, and DOT is requiring them to do a traffic impact study, we're having to kind of probably study more than they would typically need to under current traffic management standards to be able to get kind of the same result. You kind of end up at the same place both ways, as far as being able to define what the level of service is, where the impacts are, and like what improvements would directly need to be made. So in talking with our traffic engineer, it might be worth going back and seeing where we can better align those to make sure we're not duplicating work for applicants, but still getting the things that we need, the improvements that we need that are kind of the long-term, not cause detriment to the traffic and everybody's concerned about.
So our traffic study requirements are not aligned or not consistent with other communities?
Correct. Ours is fairly atypical. I've seen, it's kind of again, it's more of a bulk, like a kind of a blunt tool approach as to kind of like getting into some specific issues.
Is it more restrictive or less restrictive?
Yeah, it just
It
depends,
just
yeah.
depends. Some more restricted than some, and less restricted than others.
Right.
Well, it sounds like we just look at it by number of cars per road
That's right.
versus the specific time frames, the specific traffic, what would cause it, what's the result, there's pedestrians and...
Well, I mean, by virtue of saying level A, B, C, or D, you are integrating the time of these vehicles traveling these roads. Because if there's too many vehicles at a given location, you have level D intersection.
If you're saying based on time of day, the way we're currently doing it, it doesn't tell me, I mean, not to the same level of extent, and like I said, if they're having to do that analysis anyway for DOT, then we should probably align our,
Yeah, we should have the,
ours with DOT in that.
Yeah, we should do it.
We know why it was originally changed or done that way?
I'm not sure, other than it's really administratively easy to figure out. For instance, yeah, if I have a road that's level service C, I know that if I have something that generates, I think it's 3,000 cars a day or greater, then it tells, the triggers are just a bulk, you know, I can look at a map, I can plug in square footage of two fast food restaurants into this table, and it tells me, oh, you're over the number, you need to do this stuff. However, you know, it's usually the DOT side that ends up catching the traffic improvements that we need to make.
Is it easy to change?
I don't think it's a major thing that needs to be changed. You still have thresholds and things like that, so what triggers it, but we've ran into a lot of cases where, for instance, like ours would trigger it, but DOTs wouldn't, or DOTs would trigger it, but ours wouldn't, and so, it would just be cleaner administratively, and I think that you would get better results by aligning.
In essence, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot because we look at South Carolina DOT, their limited resources and how they pinpoint projects. We're kind of waiting for them to pull these triggers, and we're not able to present all this to them. And there may be a huge need in various areas, obviously, which we
Right. I say, yeah, I don't think it's going to like change the world. It's where we know where the traffic issues are driving around town. But when you get to the specific improvements in time of day, a lot of those improvements are time of day sensitive, or more time of day sensitive than other places. And so you get to really kind of the heart of that if you do it based on kind of the DOT variety of what the traffic thresholds are as far as level of service based on intersection more so than road sections.
Are we required developers to do both? I feel like we have for some reason recently.
They do one study that's kind of based on both us and DOT's requirements. So we kind of end up balancing the two.
We just need really to accept the DOT.
Yeah.
As presented. You don't have to overthink it.
Right.
Can staff prepare that for us?
Yeah, we can work with our traffic engineer to prepare some recommendations.
And we have already begun that process.
Any other conversation about traffic management ordinance? Okay. Just before we move on, I would say, dealing with traffic management though, has there been any thought about coordination with our lights and reviewing that for, I know, right?
I mean, that is an ongoing issue.
Has a system that they've just gone to, and I mean, I know people around the state are coming to see it because of the way it's timed and controlled, but apparently it's really relieved a lot of the congestion in that area. And it might be worth it for us to just give them a call and see who they're using for that. But
Sure.
I think our Richland Avenue lights are coordinated with perfectly. I mean, they're excellent. It's just Park Avenue. It's a bit wonky.
There's some problems on Whiskey Road. Whiskey Road is like,
But for Richland Avenue, I mean, you can go, do it right. You can get the whole in and never hit a red light from end to end.
well, this may be a good time just to review and see what other.
Yeah, we can do that.
Number 5 on our proposed action agenda is legal review of the sign ordinance.
Yeah, this is something I know, there was a U.S. Supreme Court case in 2015, I believe, and I know our sign ordinance may be potentially in conflict with that, and it is a very narrow area of expertise from a legal standpoint, so we believe that is something from a staff and talking with Gary, the city attorney, it might be appropriate for, it is recommended that we probably reach out to somebody with a lawyer that has that narrow legal expertise.
Well, the main thing though, Stuart, we just had Ryan just introduced us to all that with our continuing legal ed
Yeah.
thing. And we just went through it. Look, you need to, when somebody comes to you with certain issues, and Gary knows some religion specifically, you need to work with those people. Don't just turn that little Baptist preacher off and throw him out the door. That's what they did in that case.
That's correct. That was the court. Yes.
They threw him out the door, they ignored him, and he went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and cost that city $600,000, and he won. So, you just practically listen to these people on these little minor issues, and you'll do that, I know. That could have all been avoided. That whole case was a joke, except for that city.
The dollar amount
I
is
give you
not.
600,000 reasons if they didn't laugh.
No, but they could have avoided it, sort of, on. You could just see it happen. Just work with them, that's all. I mean, I agree though, it's way beyond legal expertise of anybody in this town. I mean, nobody in this town knows that. It is so tricky. It's ridiculous.
So that would probably be something, that we would need to build into maybe a future department budget or something along those lines that we take a look at. It's not something that's really been challenged too much, but there's a couple of just areas in there that I think it would be worth somebody with that sort of mind taking a specific look at. And it's essentially about, when you regulate signs, you're supposed to regulate them content neutral. And there's some cases that we just want to make sure that we're doing that. So if I can have this kind of sign in this area, then, you're essentially regulating the aesthetic, but not the First Amendment message of the sign. So.
Conversation. Number 6 on our agenda, subdivision and zoning regulations in the Horse District and/or residential single-family stable properties.
This is something that garnered a lot of attention since I've been here, and a couple different applications that went through the variance process. And so the question is, I guess, those that went through the variance process, one was in the RSS district and one was in the Horse District. There was enough attention given to those that the question is whether it's worth just making sure that, touching base, I guess, with both planning commission and council, that those processes are holding to a standard for our equestrian uses in town, which have been historically very important to Aiken, and if they're performing the way we would like those to perform, as far as, preserving the history, but again, being able to adjust to any maybe changes in what's important with the equine industry in town, being able to have, to ensure that those properties are usable for the purpose of, preserving our equestrian character and economic viability.
So what would you want the planning commission to do?
So, it could be, as simple as just kind of looking at those regulations, looking at the intent of those districts, and I guess, making sure that all the standards in there are essentially doing what the district is intended to do. And again, it might not be, we also have an equestrian committee, would be probably looking at anything, good use of them as the expertise, subject matter experts in the areas. That's why that group exists. So, it might be something that would maybe start even, with that group to try to get their thoughts on, what is, again, looking at what is optimal for kind of cultivating the equestrian climate.
It sounds like something the staff would do.
And it might be, yes, it might be something that we kind of work with those groups and kind of bring back to you as kind of a summary sort of thing. And again, And that's if you think something broken. Yes, if you think there might be an issue, just the level of concern raised by it, that again, you can kind of look back at those, I guess, various processes to figure out whether, you know, those kind of ended the way that you felt would be appropriate. So, if so, then the ordinance is working.
Yeah, you can tell us, because I don't know exactly what these.
Okay, and so we can kind of review that too. It's like, I guess that might be it to
And
kind
we
of.
have to be careful if it's not working, don't try to.
Well, right.
That's what we have had in the last 6 months, some real criticism about decisions we were making in the horse district. And boy, did we get fired up on
I
that.
think we need to bring the equine committee in.
Right, yeah, I was gonna
And let
say.
them review it and present it to planning for approval and that sort of thing. But the equine committee and some of the property owners around there also need to be brought in and talk to them.
Yeah, and we got a problem, I don't know, we may have a problem, I don't know.
It doesn't mean that they're the last word, but it is the horse district, and things that go on there should involve them.
Just in good policy, I mean, if it's been, you know, typically if it's been 10 or 15 years or whatever since you've looked at something, it's not a bad idea just to, again, kind of touch base again, take a step back, take a look, and I'm not saying propose changes, but just to make sure that on the ground it's performing and doing the things, it's allowing people to do the things that they need to do while maintaining the overall purpose for the better of the city.
Are there other districts that need that type of overview?
I think essentially all your zone districts, it's a good idea to do that, to make sure that on the ground, they're performing the way you want to. So again, I guess Richland West, for instance, if we're kind of worried about aesthetic, you might say, well, maybe there's something there that could have been addressed long term, and so maybe by an overlay district kind of thing, you plug that hole. So that's kind of the same way of doing the same thing.
That would be a wise approach to how we handle that, because if we single out just the equestrian community or district, it just seems like we may be wanting to change something, to your point, versus maybe the top, however, most populated city districts we need to overview because it's been 15 years, and we just need to make sure that, you know, maybe that a direction we may want to take where it's all encompassing.
And there's a benefit, I mean, as far as like, as compared to other cities I work for, we don't have a large number of zone districts. We have actually fairly few, especially commercial zone districts. So it's something that you can look at and try to figure out if, again, it's allowing the things you want it to allow, keeping the things from happening that you want to prevent. So,
Especially if it's been 15 years or whatever.
The staff will do somewhat of an internal look at those zonings, and in particular when dealing with the horse district, pull in the equestrian.
Absolutely, and that, I guess that committee played a key role in formulating the development of, or last modification of the horse district and so forth anyway, so maybe I think it is appropriate to bring them back in to take a look at it.
Just recognize that the difference between the horse district, residential, single family,
Yes,
single
right.
properties.
Right. Yes.
They're different, yeah, they're different.
I have some in my neighborhood, for example, in Mount.
Me too.
All right. Very good. Number 7 on our agenda is
Review policies to align.
locational capacity of infrastructure pending E&U water and sewer capacity studies.
And as council knows, we have funded some modeling for our water and sewer capacity. And that is ongoing and should wrap up before the end of the calendar year, by the end of the calendar year. And then that will enable us to look at how our policies and planning align with the existing capacity and any modifications that need to be made.
So it's kind of, again, you know, if you have capacity someplace, then, you know, again, it's good to kind of understand what that capacity is and to be able to kind of get advanced, into the advanced planning side of things. Again, when you're looking at these areas particularly that might be outside the town limits right now that could potentially annex in the future, to kind of understand where, I guess, the choke points are in the systems, both water, sewer, any sort of service delivery, and to be able to maybe get it out ahead on the land use side to be able to understand how that impacts that long term. So again, be working in concert with engineering utilities. This would probably be a little bit maybe longer than a year type of thing, but something that working with them overall to kind of fine tune maybe some locational. And again, it goes back to, you know, if we have capacity here and not enough capacity here, to make sure that, you know, that standards are appropriate for both areas.
And that is what staff has identified as issues. And I know historically at these meetings, council also had items, or the participants in the group had items as well that we added to the list or for consideration to be approved as an action agenda for the planning commission. If at this time there's anything that individual council members might have.
I just have a question on a couple of issues. I don't even know whether it's a planning commission issue or not. We got many disasters on this building. We've got a restaurant moving in front. We have one disabled parking slot.
Two.
Two?
There's one on this side of the alley, and there's one on the
Okay, that's right. Okay. I don't think that's enough, given what we know about the nature of our community. And I don't know whether I know the part that the disabled spots are controlled in the development process through a manual and so forth. But how do you deal with them
In the DB?
in areas that have been long-standing business parts of our community? I mean, two slots on that street.
It seems to me, I agree with you, it seems to me at the very least that there should be one at either end of a parking bank. You know, like you have one on this side of the alley right there, then there should be one back down where Park Avenue Paints used to be. And there should be one on that side of the alley, and there should be one down on the other side of the liquor store down in the corner.
I wouldn't even talk about that. I know if you go to Outback and you go to Walmart, yeah, lots of parking spaces.
I totally agree. There are plenty on Lawrence Street, or there's two on the other side of Lawrence. I think two on this side of Lawrence in that block.
Is that regulated by code though? Is it something like the ordinance office does, or? Because when you build something new, he tells you.
Now that is, correct. For off-street parking, there is a formula for the, like Lawrence Street or downtown. Typically, public safety will work and review the location of handicap spaces. I know there was just one space on this block, and we added a second one, last year, I believe. So that is something we could review through here. Yeah, correct. Typically, the planning commission has not been involved, but that is a good point. That's something we could address fairly quick.
Because I know when you build something new, the building official tells you how many you have to have.
That's correct.
Versus somebody just repurposes commercial business, you know, because of change.
That's right, especially with the off-street parking.
Well, it's going to make it, she's got her business, and I know she knows what she's doing, I hope she knows what she's doing, but it's going to really be a massive increase in demand in parking once she comes in.
Correct, I know,
That's right.
heading east on Park Avenue, for example, it's easy to find parking most hours of the day unless there's an evening event, but I expect that to change.
I expect that to change around lunchtime, especially on weekdays.
Well, we had a parking garage, then we could allow more handicap spaces in front of the businesses.
That's the other issue I was bringing up. Too early to talk about planning a parking garage, maybe parking studies in the downtown area. Is there any value in looking at that at this point?
No, I mean, yes, there is value. I think that is something, certainly if it's a will, we could put it as a proposed action agenda item for us to look at, to ask the planning commission to review. We would want to phrase it in such a way that it falls within their review abilities.
I think we need to stop the public from the need for a parking garage, and if it does nothing other than that, that's a major step forward.
Well, and that,
I mean, I don't think there's anybody here that would argue about
that could be a win-win, you know, because it would certainly open up, it would open up spaces on the street for handicap. And, you know, you're right, there are not, you know, and if somebody's in it, you're not luck. So,
They said we have to accept that. Send it back to council.
I guess I would open it up, Mr. Chairman, anything, it's kind of an informal meeting of the whole this time. Anything you'd like to,
Not really, not really. You know, we've just been through a rather strenuous sort of analysis of the Waterloo and the East Aiken area. Change of zone is not a big issue, but the Waterloo Street area is a big issue. We've been over back with the planning commission to give everybody their say. We really have. And, but we feel like there is a particular need. Y'all will have that, as you know, pretty shortly. But other than that, no, I don't have anything.
yes, realistically, the people who live in the Waterloo area within 3 or 4 blocks want to see it stay residential, but it's like Ryan brought up, nobody's going to come in there and buy a commercial property, tear down what's there, and build a house. That's just not going to happen. So it needs to be developed, but it needs to be developed cautiously and with thought to the people who live in the area. So that's what we tried to do. In listening to their concerns,
But somebody on the, you know, anybody, of course, the planning commission that has any ideas, throw them out.
When you get a lot of these vendors coming in, they live in cheap rent places. When you get places like Waterloo, Belgium, the better area, you get the old Hotwood area, they'll start going down the street and raising rents and discouraging these people from operating.
well, these were not so much business people in the area that were opposed, it were the residents.
Oh, these are homeowners.
These are homeowners, and they just don't want any council. Well, they don't want to see any kind of, they don't want change too. Right.
You'll see.
Well, I thought he did see after the council meeting when they targeted one of our members and it was real ugly to her for no reason, especially when you don't know the backstory. Exactly.
Well, like Jack said, that whole process has been real painful for everybody. I think we need to look at how we handle this and find a better way to handle these things, because we've just been going back and forth and back and forth.
Well, we have tried to bend over backwards.
I know, but I'm just saying,
Maybe we've been over too far back.
No, I don't think that anybody's at fault. I think we need to look at the way that was handled and find a better way to do it. I have really no problem with the way it was handled, but when we started out with those town hall meetings, the one I attended, the way it was presented, we got everybody upset. Nobody really knew what the purpose was. I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong, I'm just saying we ought to look at how we handled it and find a better way.
learn from it.
But there are some issues, it doesn't matter how you handle it.
Well,
That issue is, you talk about rezoning,
well, when you get the property owners, the homeowners
Yeah, I guess that's better
upset,
how you handle it.
there are issues, I don't care how you handle it. You can be as gentle as anything you want, and there's going to be opposition.
We have seen some issues on planning commission and that have had open hearings. You're right, it doesn't matter how you present it, how it's done, how gentle it's done.
I would disagree
They don't
with
want to hear it.
I think you have to look at how you handle things and look at it with.
Well, then you need to make specific suggestions, make very specific suggestions as to how the city and we mishandle it. I'm open to hearing them. I don't believe you got about
I'm
that
not smart, Jack.
Well, but you're saying it was mishandled, you and Ms. Gregory. Okay.
I'm saying, I think we can look
I'll tell you how it was mishandled. I knew nothing about the backstory. I sat in a council meeting, I saw the agenda, I saw the people come up, make their case. I tried to listen. They were angry, they were upset. But, so the point, in my opinion, is, yes, I think that town hall meeting could have been presented differently. I think it was a learning experience for both planning and council. I came to the last planning meeting. I still didn't know that council initiated that whole situation. Got blasted by everybody after the meeting too. And
Yeah,
so
we all
then-
sent that to us. I mean, the city
So-
council
so-
sent that to us.
Right. Oh, you made that abundantly clear that day, Jack, you did. And so, you know, again, it just comes down to the information at hand. It was a learning experience. Hopefully we'll move forward with it and learn that the way we present things to the city should be discussed thoroughly, put thought behind it, and processed. I mean, it definitely, to me, and I agree with you, Mayor, you just said it, it was a learning experience. And let's hope we all learn from it, because it can be handled differently.
There was no way to handle that issue without somebody being a winner and somebody being a loser. That's just the way that it is on that, and that's the toughest decision we have to
I
make.
agree, and we should all be aware of what's going on.
Well, I think we get down to one of the things you just said was they want it to stay residential. It's not residential.
It's not
limited professional, which causes a little bit of problem because the professional uses that are there, most of them, if not all, are non-conforming.
And they've dropped off.
So it is residential for a certain number.
And there are some houses sprinkled in that are,
Well, I think too, once you see when Lomnitz is redone, that should be a little boost for that corner, when that's gonna be a boost. But I
and
can
that's
just
only limited
envision,
professional.
I
It's
can-
not.
no, but I can envision that area being a mix of small businesses and townhomes. And I don't see why that, or apartments, I don't see why that can't be done.
Why can't, to be a part of
And when I reflect back on our town, every progressive move that we've made for the good of our town has been met with resistance.
Exactly.
No matter what we do now or in the future, it is going to be met with resistance.
Exactly.
But what we've got to realize is that we're at these meetings every day, and we have information that sometimes our motivators do not have. And so to be reluctant to do the right thing for future planning of our town is not an example of the leadership we want to display. So we're going to have a lot of stuff. This is not the only one. There's going to be a lot of other tough decisions we're going to have to make for the good of our town for the next 50 years. And if we sit back and not do anything for fear of what we might have that may be negative, we would just be sitting on our hands doing nothing.
And then we become stagnant.
And nobody's saying that it wasn't the right move. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I agree with how you guys proceeded with everything and the motions that were made. It's just,
We understand that people.
that's exactly right.
I think to help clarify that with what Ms. Gregory had, I'd ask, I clearly asked staff to put that on our agenda because I do believe in that project. I think in the future, when anyone on the council, which we all have a right to put things on the agenda, when that happens, Stuart, keep in mind, put requests by, I think we've gotten away from doing that, requested by Mayor Osborne, requested by, Councilwoman. I think that kind of helps with the origin, and I'm fine with that. I didn't realize that was in question until you told me the story that, so that's an easy verification, but.
And it is, and I think we're moving in the right direction.
And to piggyback what Leslie was saying, remember when 2001 era Leslie, when they were up in arms that they were going to do the village out there, and so the whole village and the world was coming to an end. And it got through somehow, thank God, and it's one of the highest areas now, along with Hammond Ferry over there in North Augusta, and that's controversial. And people they're afraid of change. People can't envision what good will come of it. And you've got commercial, you got the mixed thing in the village of commercial and residential, and they all seem to love it. And same thing in Hammond's Ferry. It could have worked.
Yes, it could.
Part of the problem on Waterloo Street was that Facebook got activated with wrong information.
Yeah.
Misinformation.
Everything else on there.
Mark Stop page.
You cannot stop bad information. You can't stop.
And and I got lots of calls on it. Because I asked one person, what would you think about this, and then wrong information got out, and the world went thin. So I'll take the full responsibility for the whole thing, it doesn't bother me.
Thanks, I'll.
Bob?
After 33 years of service to the city of Aiken, I've submitted my resignation from the planning commission to the end of my term, which will be in December. I've served on the planning commission for 3 terms and enjoyed it. Served on various other communities and then first did over 25 years in public safety. But I enjoyed it. Doesn't mean I'm completely out of the game. I might find another committee that needs to, but I've notified both Dick and Stuart and Ms. Sarah. December would be my last planning commission meeting.
Bob, let me take this opportunity to, and I'm sure we'll get another, hopefully, at that time, but thanks for your service for our city. It's better because of it.
Thank you.
We're gonna pass to the chair in December.
It's certainly been in there, so.
I was just thinking that he said he was leaving.
Yeah, he
Just
said,
wait.
well, you heard him say that that doesn't mean that he won't be joining another commission or they're on BZA.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving us this opportunity. Stuart and Ryan, I appreciate you guys putting this agenda together, and this has been productive, and I hope we don't wait another, how many years has it been?
5.
Let's make this an annual.
It's like the Olympics plus one.
I think it really will be twice a year.
I did plenty of them. I did one way back.
We're talking about the last meeting.
Done about 12 of them.
Watch it.
All right.
Remember, I called you.
We're adjourned.
Bye, Abby.